Okay, so let's just jump right in. I want you to picture a manual.
Okay.
But I'm not talking about, the little booklet that comes with your IKEA bookshelf.
Like slightly.
Right.
Not that.
And definitely not some dry corporate employee handbook. No. Imagine a guide that claims it can solve the absolute chaos of the human mind.
That's a pretty tall order.
A huge one. Right. A guide that says it can fix your indecision, maybe cure your anxiety, and essentially tell you how to be a high-functioning person when the world feels like it's burning down around you.
Which, I mean, that sounds like something we could all use right about now, doesn't it?
Exactly. But here's the kicker. This manual isn't from some modern self-help guru. It's not from a Silicon Valley CEO who's microdosing in the desert. It's thousands of years old. But, and this is where it gets really interesting for our deep dive, the version we're looking at today comes from a guy who is a modern innovator, a computer scientist.
It's such a fascinating juxtaposition, isn't it? You usually think of theology in one drawer and, computer science in a completely different one.
Totally separate. So today we're diving deep into the Bhagavad Gita, but specifically through the introduction and background in a compilation by Dr. Giridhar Boray. And just to set the stage, this isn't just another translation. The source material we have explicitly calls this text the ultimate treatise on personality development.
Which is such a modern buzzword. You hear personality development and you think HR seminars, not ancient Vedic scripture.
Right. And the author, Dr. Boray, he's not a monk in a cave somewhere. He's got degrees from Indian and U.S. universities. He's a prolific inventor in mobile and digital tech, has several patents to his name.
So you have a mind that understands the logic of code, the physics of signals.
Yes, the binary nature of computing.
Right.
And he's applying that same logical mind to, well, metaphysics.
And that's exactly why this is so unique. We often frame science and spirituality as these two warring camps. You're either on team physics or team metaphysics.
You have to pick a side.
Yeah. But what Dr. Boray represents here is a harmonious blend. It's the idea that this ancient literature isn't just mystical poetry, it's a systematic almost an engineered approach to the human condition.
I love that phrase, engineered approach, because when we get into the details later, especially with the numbers, it feels less like religion and more like, well, like code.
It really does. It has a structure that a programmer or an engineer would absolutely appreciate.
Before we geek out on all the math, we have to set the scene.
Yeah.
Because the Gita doesn't happen in a quiet monastery or a library.
No.
It happens in probably the worst possible place for a deep philosophical lecture.
It happens smack in the middle of a battlefield.
So take us there. I feel like a lot of people might know the name Gita, or maybe they saw the Oppenheimer movie and heard that one famous quote.
Now I am become death.
Right, that one. But they don't know the actual setup. So for a listener coming in fresh, what is actually happening here?
Okay, so the stage is the Mahabharata, which is this massive, sprawling epic. Our source dates it to around 5000 BC, which is just staggering to think about.
Mind-boggling.
And at its core, if you strip away all the gods and magic for just a second, it's a family feud that has spiraled completely out of control.
The ultimate family feud.
Truly. You've got two sets of cousins. On one side, the Pandavas, the 5 brothers. They're sort of the good guys in the story.
Okay.
And on the other side, you have the Kauravas, the 100 brothers.
Wait, 100 brothers? Just, wow. Practically speaking, that's a lot of siblings.
It is a lot, and they all grew up together. They had the same teachers. But the Kauravas, who were led by the eldest, Duryodhana, were just consumed by jealousy. And the main conflict really kicks off with a disastrous game of dice.
I remember this part. This wasn't a friendly game of Scrabble.
Not at all. The Pandavas were cheated royally. They lost everything. Their kingdom, their wealth, their freedom. They were forced into exile for 12 years, plus a 13th year where they had to live in disguise.
And the deal was, if they pulled it off, if they completed the exile without being discovered in that last year, they'd get their kingdom back.
A very specific contract. And they did it. They fulfilled their end of the bargain. They suffered through the forest. They hid their identities. They did everything they were supposed to do. But when they came back...
Let me guess. The Kauravas didn't exactly honor the agreement.
Worse than that. They just flat out refused. So the Pandavas, knowing how devastating a war would be, tried to de-escalate. They said, look, we don't need the whole kingdom. Forget the empire. Just give us 5 villages so we can live with some dignity.
Hold on. They went from being emperors of the known world to asking for 5 villages. That sounds less like a peace treaty and more like surrender.
Well, it might look like weakness to the ego, but the source frames it as the ultimate moral high ground.
Oh, so.
By asking for the absolute bare minimum, they put the entire moral burden of the war squarely on the Kauravas. It was a strategic checkmate. If Duryodhana refused even that.
Then he proves he's just driven by pure greed.
Exactly, by malice. And he did refuse. He famously said he wouldn't give them enough land to stick a needle in.
So war was the only option left.
It was inevitable. It wasn't a war of aggression by the Pandavas. It was framed as a war for justice. A last resort.
Okay, so the stage is set. You've got the 100 brothers and their huge army on one side, the 5 brothers and their allies on the other. And this is where that freeze frame moment happens.
Yes, this is the moment that turns it from a war story into a psychological manual. Arjuna, who is the 3rd Pandava brother and the greatest archer of his time, he asks his charioteer to drive him out into the middle of the battlefield.
And his charioteer just so happens to be Lord Krishna, which is, a pretty big flex, having the divine as your personal driver.
It is. So they park the chariot right there between these 2 massive armies. The conch shells have already blown. The adrenaline is pumping. And Arjuna looks around.
And what does he see?
He stops seeing the enemy. For the first time, it really hits him. He sees his uncles. He sees his great-grandfather, Bhishma, who probably bounced him on his knee as a kid. He sees his teacher, Drona, the man who taught him how to even hold a bow. He sees friends, cousins.
And he just cracks.
He completely breaks down. And this is the aha moment for anyone listening. This deep dive isn't really about the war. It's about that freeze frame moment when a human being under unbelievable pressure just stops functioning.
I think that's why it's so timeless. Because we've all been there. Maybe not in a chariot with a bow, but we've all had that moment. You're about to give a big presentation or walk into a courtroom or make a life-altering decision, and your brain just goes, nope, I can't do this.
Yeah, precisely. And the source material makes a really specific point here. It describes Arjuna as Nara, which just means human. He's the everyman.
He's our stand-in. But wait a second. Arjuna is a seasoned warrior. He's fought countless battles, even against demons. Isn't this, I don't know, kind of cowardly to freeze up right at the starting line?
That is such an important distinction the source makes. It's not cowardice. Arjuna isn't afraid of dying. He's not afraid of getting hurt. He's the best warrior on the planet.
Okay, so what is he afraid of?
He's overwhelmed by what the source calls excessive love, respect, and devotion. He is paralyzed because he loves the people he has to kill. It's a crisis of attachment.
That is, wow. That is surprisingly relatable.
Think about it in a modern context, like workplace nepotism or any kind of conflicted interest.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine you're a manager and you have to fire someone who's a close friend or a family member.
That's brutal. That's 10 times harder than firing a stranger you don't like.
Of course it is. Your professional duty says you have to do X, but your emotional attachment, your heart, says, I cannot possibly hurt this person. That is exactly where Arjuna is. He's trapped between his duty as a warrior, which is to fight for justice, and his feelings as a nephew, a grandson, a student.
The source uses the phrase momentary delusion.
Yes. It says that even the most skilled professionals, and Arjuna is a professional, can be hit by these moments. Doubts, fears, jealousies. The text calls it a mental discrepancy.
Mental discrepancy. It sounds so clinical.
But it's accurate, isn't it? And that's where the whole personality development angle comes in. Because Krishna doesn't just say, hey, buck up, soldier. He doesn't give him a simple pep talk.
He starts a therapy session.
He starts a therapy session right there on the battlefield.
But how does that even work? I mean, if someone's having a full-blown panic attack, just telling them to calm down and think differently, that usually doesn't help.
Right. So the source says the Gita's purpose is to uplift Arjuna from this discrepancy. But the how is everything. Krishna doesn't start with a breathing exercise. He starts with a massive cognitive reframe. He forces Arjuna to zoom out.
Zoom out.
Well, Arjuna is zoomed way in on, I am about to kill my uncle. Krishna zooms him all the way out to, you are an eternal soul, performing a necessary duty in a vast cosmic order, and physical death is just a transition. It addresses the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual all at once. It's a complete overhaul of his entire worldview.
I love the dynamic the source points out, too. You have Arjuna, the studious disciple, who starts firing off all these questions. And Krishna, as the fount of the sermon, it feels less like a lecture and more like a master class. Arjuna is asking the really hard questions, the ones we'd probably ask.
And that actually brings us to the whole double meaning of the text, because if we just read this as a story about a guy having a panic attack before a fight, it's interesting, sure. But Dr. Boray's source material says we have to look deeper. The Sanskrit verses themselves are built for multiple meanings.
Okay, this is the battlefield of the mind concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In this symbolic interpretation, the battlefield, Kurukshetra, it's not a geographical place in India.
It's my own head.
It's the human body, the
Yeah.
human mind.
So if the battlefield is my mind, who are the armies fighting?
The war is the constant daily strife between our good impulses and our evil ones. The Palevas, the five brothers, they represent the virtues, things like patience, truth, charity.
Okay.
And the Kauravas, the 100 brothers, they represent all our vices: greed, anger, jealousy, ego.
And there are a lot more Kauravas than Pandavas. 100 versus 5.
Which feels pretty true to the human experience, right? We often feel outnumbered by our negative thoughts.
Yeah. You have one thought that says, I should really go to the gym. And then 20 other thoughts pipe up with, but the couch is so comfortable and there's a new show on Netflix and maybe you should eat that donut first.
Those are the Kauravas, exactly.
So the lesson is that quality can beat quantity.
It is. The 5 can defeat the 100, but,
Yeah.
and this is the big if, only if they're guided by the charioteer.
Krishna, which represents what in this metaphor? The divine.
The higher intellect, the divine connection, your conscience, your wisdom.
So this completely shifts the text from being a history book to a daily psychological manual. It's about the fight I'm having with myself when my alarm goes off in the morning.
It is. And the source material actually brings up this interesting history versus fiction debate.
Oh, right. Because people argue about this endlessly. Did this really happen? Were these real people?
And Dr. Boray's source takes a very pragmatic, almost elegant view on it. It basically says, look, if it's fictitious, then it's an absolute masterpiece of storytelling that perfectly captures the human condition.
Can't argue with that.
But if it's real,
This is where it gets a little wild.
if it's real, the source argues it's evidence for the existence of what it calls superior human beings.
Superior human beings. Sounds like something out of a comic book.
It does, but think about the description. People who were physically stronger, mentally sharper, capable of incredible feats. The source points out that all these characters were disciples of Drona. They were incredibly learned. They were masters of sophisticated weaponry. It's a fascinating thought.
So it works either way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you see it as a historical account of some lost golden age of humanity or the greatest psychological allegory ever written,
Yeah.
the wisdom still applies.
Exactly. But for the modern listener, I think the psychological battle is the most immediate and powerful hook. We are all on that battlefield every single day.
Totally. Now, speaking of hooks,
Mm.
we have to talk about the numbers.
Yes.
Because I was reading through this part of the source material, and I had to stop and think, wait, is this some kind of conspiracy theory? But it's just math.
It's the cosmic code of the Gita.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you can really see Dr. Boray's computer science background shining through because he has such an appreciation for the data.
The number 18. The source calls this the Easter egg of the Gita.
It's incredible. In Indian theology, there's a whole branch of knowledge called Sankhya Yoga, which is basically the study of numbers. The ancients were obsessed with precision.
Okay, so break down the Jaya thing for me, because this just blew my mind.
All right. So the Sanskrit word for victory is Jaya. Now, in Sanskrit, every letter also has a numerical value. It's a kind of code, almost like ASCII for computers.
The cipher.
Exactly. So the consonant ja is the 8th consonant in its group, and the semivowel ya is the 1st in its group. So you get the digits 8 and 1.
81.
But there's a grammatical rule in this numerical system that says you read the numbers in reverse order. The phrase is Ankanam vamato gati.
So 81 becomes 18.
18. The very word for victory literally encodes the number 18.
Okay. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Humans are pattern-seeking animals. If I look hard enough for the number 23 in a newspaper, I'll find it. Is Dr. Boray just finding these connections, or are they, like, structural?
That is a fair question, but once you start looking, the number 18 isn't just hidden, it's the fundamental architecture of the whole thing. The Gita has 18 chapters. The Mahabharata epic itself is divided into 18 volumes.
Okay.
The war itself lasted for exactly 18 days.
That's a lot of coincidences. Keep going.
The armies. There were 18 regiments, or akshohinis, in total. 11 on the Kaurava side, 7 on the Pandava side.
11 plus 7 is 18. Okay? And when Duryodhana, the main villain, lists his top generals at the beginning.
He names 18 leaders.
And the conch shells that start the war.
18 conches are sounded.
It's just unbelievable. It's like the author was completely obsessed with this number, but then the source drops. The real mind bender. This is the one that made me pull out my phone calculator because I didn't believe it.
This is where the argument for intelligent design over random coincidence gets really strong, because the ancient text is incredibly precise about the composition of a single regiment.
We're not talking about roughly 20,000 soldiers.
No, it's exact, and it's based on a specific ratio. For every 1 elephant, there's 1 chariot, 3 horses, and 5 foot soldiers.
Okay, give me the numbers.
A single regiment had 21,870. Okay, let me do the math. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 8 is 11, plus 7 is 18, plus 0 is 18.
It sums to 18. Whoa. Okay, that's one.
What?
Surely it doesn't work for the others. What about the horses?
65,610 horses.
65,610. Okay. 6 plus 5 is 11. Plus 6 is 17. Plus 1 is 18. No way, the foot soldiers.
109,350.
109,000. Okay. 1 plus 0 is 1. Plus 9 is 10. Plus 3 is 13. Plus 5 is 18. Every single component of the army, the number of units, sums up to 18.
Every single one. Even the chariots, which is the same number as the elephants, 21,870.
It can't be an accident.
The source implies it has to be by design. The probability of that happening by chance across all 4 branches is astronomically low. It speaks to this incredible, almost fractal-like precision in the composition.
It makes you wonder what else is encoded in there that we just don't see.
And that structure isn't just for show. It actually gives us a way to navigate the book, because 700 verses it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But the source suggests this rigid structure, the 18 chapters, isn't just a random container. It's a curriculum.
Right. And this is probably the most useful part for a new listener. The book is divided into 3 clean sections, 6 chapters each. It's not just one long sermon, it's a progressive course.
Exactly. It's a roadmap. Dr. Boray breaks it down into 3 very distinct, let's call them semesters.
Okay, let's walk through that roadmap. This is the real meat of the deep dive. What are these 3 sections actually teaching us?
So section 1 is chapters 1 through 6. This is called The Path to Divine Knowledge, or Jnana Upaya.
What's the general vibe of this first semester?
This is the Get Your House in Order semester. It's very practical. It starts with the problem itself, Arjuna's distress in chapter 1.
The cold feet, the breakdown.
Yep. And then, bam, chapter 2. The source calls this the summary chapter. If you were only going to read one chapter of the Gita, this might be it.
It's the executive summary.
It is. It lays out the core doctrine of Sankhya. And this is where you get that incredibly famous lesson about duty.
Oh, you have a right to the work, but not to the fruits of the work.
Exactly. You have a right to your duty, but not to the results of that duty.
Can we just pause on that for a second?
Yeah.
Because that is one of the hardest lessons in the entire world to learn. We live for the results. We want the promotion. We want the likes on social media. We want the thank you.
And Krishna's point is that's precisely where all our suffering comes from. If your happiness is tied to a result you can't control, you're a slave to the future. But if you can find fulfillment in the duty itself, in the action, you're free.
Do the work, because the work needs to be done, not because you want the reward at the end.
You got it. And then Chapter 3 digs deeper into action, because Arjuna, being clever, tries to find a loophole. He says, well, hang on. If knowledge is so much better than action, why do I have to fight? Can't I just go sit in a cave and meditate?
Which is a fair question. If the world is a mess, why not just opt out?
And Krishna completely shuts that down. He explains what he calls the cyclic order of the universe. He says you can't exist without acting. Even breathing is an action. So the choice isn't to act or not to act. It's how to act.
So chapters 4, 5, and 6. These seem to be the toolkit for how to act.
They are. Wisdom, renunciation, self-restraint. But I want to highlight something in chapter 6, which is about meditation, or dhyana.
Okay.
It gives very practical advice on posture, breath control, where to focus the mind. But there is this beautiful moment of reassurance that the source points out. Arjuna asks, what if I try all this spiritual stuff and I fail? What if I die before I reach the goal? Is all that effort wasted?
That's the fear of failure. I tried the new diet and it didn't work, so now I just feel like a loser.
Exactly. And Krishna's answer is profound. He says, no sincere effort is ever a waste. You just pick up where you left off in the next life. It's a very forgiving system.
Okay, so that's semester 1. Practical tools. Fix your mind, fix your actions.
Definitely.
Then we hit section 2, chapters 7 through 12. The source says this is a big shift.
It's a huge shift. The focus moves from how to who is. It moves from the method to the object of devotion. The whole section is about the nature of the Lord Almighty.
This sounds a lot more mystical.
It is. And we need to pause on chapter 7 because Dr. Boray makes a critical distinction between two words, jnana and vijnana.
They sound almost the same. What's the difference?
Okay, so jnana is book knowledge. It's like reading a manual on how to swim. You can learn all the strokes, you can understand the physics of buoyancy.
But you're still standing by the side of the pool, completely dry.
Exactly. Vijnana is jumping in, it's direct realized wisdom. The source argues a lot of us are stuck in jnana. We know the theory of how to be a good person, but we don't have the vijnana, the actual lived experience.
And this sets up chapter 10, right? The manifestations.
Yes, the concept of vibhuti. The Lord says, I am the superiority in all superior things.
Give me an example of that.
He says, of rivers, I am the Ganges. Of mountains, I am Mount Meru. Essentially, whenever you see something that is the absolute pinnacle of its kind, the best of the best, that excellence is a tiny spark of the divine.
That's a really cool way to look at the world. So if you see an incredible athlete at their peak, or a breathtaking sunset, or just a piece of brilliant art, that's a glimpse.
It turns the entire world into a place of worship. You don't need a temple, you just have to learn to appreciate excellence.
And then comes chapter 11, the big one. The visual effects budget goes through the roof.
The Vishwarupa.
The universal form.
Right. Arjuna basically says, okay, I've heard you say you are everything, now show me. And Krishna grants him divine vision, and he sees it all. A form with the brightness of 1,000 suns, containing all of creation, all of destruction, past, present, future, all at once.
It's meant to be both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It's the moment you see the source code behind the simulation.
It is. And it leads perfectly into chapter 12, which wraps up the section on the path of devotion, or bhakti. The source notes that Krishna calls this path easier than abstract meditation.
Why easier?
Because it's personal. It's about a relationship. For most people, loving a person or a form of God is easier than trying to meditate on a formless, abstract concept.
Okay, so we've done the prep work in section 1. We've met the divine in section 2. What's left for section 3, chapters 13 to 18?
This is reiteration and clarification. It goes even deeper into the philosophy. Chapter 14 is fascinating for anyone interested in modern psychology. It introduces the 3 qualities, or gunas.
Oh, this is the personality test chapter. I love this.
In a way, yeah. The source breaks down all of reality into 3 operating modes. Sattva, which is piety, goodness, balance. Rajas, which is passion, activity, restlessness. And tamas, which is ignorance, inertia, laziness.
And we're all a mix of these 3, right? We're not just one.
Exactly. But understanding which one is dominant in you at any given moment is the key to self-mastery. If you feel frantic and scattered, that's Rajas acting up. If you feel lazy and can't get off the couch, that's tamas. If you feel calm and clear, that's sattva.
It's like a diagnostic tool for your own mind. Why am I so angry right now? Oh, my Rajas is out of control.
Precisely. Then we have chapter 15, the theology of the supreme being.
We have to mention the numerology here, another little Easter egg.
The source notes this chapter has 20 verses, but if you count the total number of letters in those verses.
Don't tell me it's 18.
No, it has exactly 700 letters.
And the entire Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses.
Exactly. It's like a hologram. The whole is contained within the part.
At this point, the author is just showing off.
It certainly demonstrates a level of compositional genius that's hard to even fathom.
And it all wraps up in chapter 18, the grand finale.
Liberation. It's a summary of everything. But there's one key distinction in this chapter the source emphasizes: the difference between sannyasa and tyaga.
Okay, please explain this like I'm 5. Because they both get translated as renunciation, right?
Roughly, yes. But the nuance is everything. So think of sannyasa as quitting your job, selling your house, and moving to a cave to meditate because you hate the material world. It's a renunciation of action.
Okay, so you're quitting the game entirely.
Right. Tyaga, on the other hand, is staying at your job, doing it to the best of your ability, but relinquishing the emotional attachment to the outcome. You're not attached to whether you get the promotion or the praise. It's internal detachment versus external rejection.
So Tyag is way harder.
Much harder. But it's also more practical for most of us. And Krishna advises Tyaga, don't run away from the world. Learn to live in it without letting it own you.
That is a life hack right there.
It is. And the book ends with the narrator, Sanjaya, just in a state of euphoric bliss from having heard this profound wisdom.
Now, we've covered the structure, the math, the curriculum, but we need to address the philosophical elephant in the room. Every version of the Gita is read through a specific lens, and Dr. Boray is very upfront about his lineage.
Yes, this is crucial. We can't just glaze over it. The interpretation we're discussing is based on the philosophy of Dvaita, or dualism.
Okay, stop right there. I need to get my head around dualism because it kind of goes against everything I've seen on Instagram about we are all one. You know, the drop becomes the ocean, I am the universe is me.
Right. And that philosophy is called monism, or Advaita. It's very popular. But the source we're using today follows the lineage of a 13th century philosopher named Sri Madhvacharya, and his central thesis was dualism.
Which means?
What?
Exactly.
It means there is a clear, permanent, and real distinction between the individual soul and the Lord Almighty. You are not God. You will never become God.
So no matter how much I meditate, I don't eventually merge into the cosmic oneness and disappear.
In this particular view, no. You always remain an individual soul. Think of it this way. Is it better to taste sugar or to become sugar?
To taste it, I guess.
Right, because if you become sugar, you can no longer experience its sweetness. You just are it. This philosophy argues that the ultimate goal isn't to vanish into God, but to have a loving, eternal relationship with God, and to serve and enjoy that connection.
And the source traces this lineage very clearly, from Madhvacharya down through different saints and teachers, all the way to Dr. Boray's own father, and then to him.
It creates a chain of custody for the knowledge. It's not just Dr. Boray's personal opinion. It's an interpretation that has been refined and stress-tested for over 800 years.
It definitely gives the text a different flavor. It's less about I am God and more about I have a specific, unique role to play in God's universe. It feels more humble.
It promotes humility and a focus on duty. If you are distinct from God, then your job is to align your will with the divine will, not to pretend that you are the divine.
So let's bring this all back to the listener. Why read this now? We're not Bronze Age warriors. We're people with mortgages and social media anxiety. Why does a computer scientist think this is what we need?
The source has a great phrase for this. It calls it learning while doing.
Yes, I highlighted that.
It compares the Gita to on-the-job training. And it points out the central irony. The deepest lessons aren't learned when we're comfortable in a classroom. They're learned at the height of misery and peril.
That's so profound. We always think, oh, I'll get around to philosophy when I retire, or I'll start meditating when life calms down.
But the Gita says no. The time to learn is when you're in the crisis. Arjuna didn't get this lecture in a peaceful palace. He got it when the arrows were about to fly.
So for the listener, their battlefield could be a layoff.
Yeah.
Or a health diagnosis. Or a painful breakup, or just the overwhelming noise of modern life.
Exactly. Arjuna is a proxy for all of our crossroads moments. When you have no idea which way to turn, that is your Kurukshetra. That's when this manual becomes most relevant.
And the promise of the text.
It promises to address the ills of man, physical, psychological, and spiritual. And it offers that wonderful boon we talked about from Chapter 6. Sincere effort is never lost.
That's the ultimate safety net. You can't really mess this up as long as you're genuinely trying.
Exactly. It's a very forgiving manual, despite its incredible rigor and structure.
So as we wrap this up, I just keep coming back to Dr. Boray. You have a man who is literally inventing the future filing patents for mobile technology. And at the same time, he's reaching back 5,000 years to find the operating manual for how to be a human being.
It suggests that while our external technology has changed beyond recognition, our internal software, our fears, our doubts, our search for purpose, that hasn't had an update since 5000 BC.
We're all still just Arjuna standing in the middle of a battlefield freezing up.
We really are.
So here's a final thought for you to take with you today. We live in a world of constant digital distraction. That's our modern battlefield. We're bombarded with information and demands. Is it possible that the ultimate superpower in this age isn't being smarter or faster, but just having the ability to do what Arjuna did? To hit pause, to freeze time right in the middle of all the chaos and ask the big questions.
And maybe to start looking for the hidden patterns in your own life, to find your own number 18.
Exactly. Is it all just random chaos, or is there a code running underneath it all? That's something worth thinking about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the background of the Bhagavad Gita.
Has been a real pleasure.
We'll see you next time.